and then remember to refresh before you request to speak. Thank you so much.
And so I think we'll finish with Korea, and then we'll get our meeting started. So the Republic of Korea.
Hi. Hi, can you hear me?
Hello, Republic of Korea. We can hear you and see you. Just be mindful of sort of background noise. So since you're in the room with many people, just remain muted when you're not speaking, and preferably move close to your microphone. Thank you.
Oh, and I actually do see, I missed one country, and I believe they were having problems before, so it might be worth checking again. This is Lao PDR.
Hello, Lao PDR. So I cannot hear you very, very clearly. It might sound like you're not using the microphones that you have on your table. So I think you have to go closer to the computer, to where the camera is.
Okay. You will try.
I cannot hear you from that microphone, so please go closer to the computer. Thank you. Hello. So still the same issue. The microphone you're using is not the one from the table, but actually the computer itself. Since the meeting is about to begin, I'll be happy to assist you through messaging, and I can also give you a call. I will message you privately today. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Axel. Thank you, Axel, for trying to help our colleagues there in Lao. So with apologies to our colleague from HSI who's been asking to test, but I'm going to hope that your system is well set up and that you've had the opportunity to see some of the tips and tricks here, because we are now 10 minutes over our starting time, and I do want us to begin. So Ron, I beg your indulgence there. So welcome, everyone. I think it's a good time for us to begin our meeting. And before we get into the bulk of our agenda, I am going to turn to the Secretariat to help us with some logistical explanations and introductions. And I do appreciate everyone who's taken the time to arrive early and attend the testing session so that we can all get familiar with this brand new way of meeting. So maybe I'll turn over to the Secretariat to start us off.
Chair, I'm gonna share my screen. It's really a very quick recap of the different of the setup of Kudo. I'll try to be quick on that one. So you can clearly see, I'm gonna run you clockwise through the platform, and just a couple more things at the very end. The first thing I want to point out is you can switch between live video and presentation. So if you click on presentation, you should see the slide. And if you click on live video, then you should see the speakers. For most of the meeting, we will be just using live video. So that's not really pertinent for the time being. It's just for now. One other thing I want to point out is that little circular arrow on the top right here. It will allow you to refresh your browser. If by any chance you have a problem with your audio or with your connection, just press on that and hopefully it will refresh everything and it might solve the problem. I also want to run through quickly those different buttons on the right. The first one I want to insist on is the messaging. As you probably noticed, there are 3 tabs here. One is for participants. So that's just, you can say greetings, you can reach out to each other. The other one is technical support. So if you have problems connecting, then please do use the technical support. And the last one is the private. So as it is called, if you want to contact someone just one-on-one, just use the private tab. I want to go back to the use of messaging during the meeting. It will not be part of the official record, whatever is written under the participant tab, but we will use it as a backup. Very concretely, if the standing committee chair has given you the floor and you have tried to take the floor, but for some technical reason, for instance, there's an echo or we can't hear you, then as a backup, especially if we were not able to hear you, you can probably type in your intervention into the messaging tab under participant, and then the secretariat will read it into the record. So the idea is really meant to use as a backup after you've been granted the floor by the standing committee chair, and for some whatever technical reasons it didn't work, so we have this possible backup. The other possible use I want to highlight for the messaging tab is some documents call for intersessional working groups. So if they are indeed established by the standing committee, we will probably use the messaging tab under participant so that different parties and observers can express an interest in joining the working group. So that's another possible use for the messaging system. Now, still going clockwise, documents, there are no documents uploaded for the time being. Then you have the active user list. So it is the equivalent in a face-to-face meeting of literally looking around the room and trying to see who is in there. Now, the other thing I want to insist on is the request to speak. You've got to click the blue button, request to speak, and then wait for the standing committee chair to give you the floor. And once you are given the floor, you will appear on the screen with the other speakers. And what is really important to remember is you have to activate your own microphone and your own camera. You have to remember to click on those two buttons that are at the bottom here to be able to take the floor. And also, I would like to remind you to release the mic once you've made your statement so that you actually disappear from the screen. Once you disappear from the screen, it will tell you that you have released the mic. Another feature is this at the bottom right here, make a point of order. In a face-to-face meeting, you would be standing up and waving your nameplate. That's for parties, of course, since only parties can make point of order. So that's the digital equivalent if you want of standing up and waving your nameplate and yelling point of order. It will, concretely, what will happen if you click on the point of order button, you will appear on the request to speak list at the very top and in red. So it will be brought immediately to the standing committee chair's attention. And finally, the last point here is you can choose your interpretation language at the bottom left. Right now on this slide, it's written for floor, but you can, of course, choose English, French, or Spanish. And also, I would like to take advantage of that to remind people to please speak slowly. I tend to speak too fast, so I'm borderline in terms of speed. So just to remind you that it is, if you want a good interpretation, it is important that you speak slowly. The other last two things before I wrap up in terms of housekeeping issues is at the end of today's meeting, we will indicate on the SC73 document page where we stand in terms of agenda items covered. So we will write 6th of May, upcoming agenda items, and that way you will know where we stand, what we've been able to cover. And I think we will try to also put it on the homepage of the CITES website. And the last thing is that we will record the meeting, and I just wanted to make sure that everyone is okay with it. It's just to be completely transparent, we will record the meeting. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I will then release the floor and the mic. Thank you very much. If I manage to do that.
Yes, first instance of not unmuting. Thank you, Secretariat, for walking us through the platform. It's greatly appreciated, and I'm sure we will take heed of your good advice. I would like to get us started, and I know one of the key things for our meeting is to ensure we have quorum. So perhaps while I give my opening remarks and the remarks, and I turn to the Secretary General, if I could ask the members of the committee, for one member from each country on the committee, to just request the floor. I will not give you the floor, but it will help bring your names up to the top of my list so I can assure we have quorum before I begin our debates. So while I ask you to do that, perhaps I will just take a minute to you, committee members, to the party observers present, to the non-party observers, to wish you all welcome to this meeting. I really appreciate the efforts all of you have made to attend, be it late in your evening, early in your morning, or perhaps in your lunch break. Really, your commitment to advancing our CITES agenda under these unusual circumstances is appreciated. And in this regard, I also want to extend my thank you to the Secretariat for finding and proposing innovative ways of getting us to this point. It has been and remains a challenging year, one with hope and with loss. And I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the loss of our dear colleagues, Maurice Isaac and Zoltan Zizrak. My condolences to their family, and indeed to any of you who have experienced loss in this past year. So today we are embarking on a new experience, a virtual meeting. I want to thank the Secretariat for helping us get here, for looking for options to move our mandate forward. As you've recognized, I'm sure, our agenda is not what we might have seen in the best of times. Rather, this new platform required our adaptation of the length and the approach to the agenda. But I am confident that together we will have a good discussion, hear from all the members, parties, and observers present, and move ahead with the ambitious mandate provided to us by the COP. So before we begin, just a few engagement principles. You have all seen how this platform works, but we'll exercise our patience as we learn to use this new mode of discussion. I'll ask you all for short interventions. Now is not the time to quote Dickens. Focus your comments on the decisions at hand. Speak slowly and carefully for our intrepid interpreters. They have the additional challenge of variable audio connections. And with my thanks, please do refrain from the traditional thank yous in your intervention. On behalf of us all, I extend our thanks to the Secretariat, to the interpreters, to the chairs of the Intersessional working groups, to the chairs of the Animals and Plants Committee, and most of all to you, the committee members and observers who have come here prepared to engage and guide our collective work. During this meeting session, we will not be using in-session working groups. So let's look for those areas of agreement where we can advance. And finally, make sure to have your coffee or beverage of choice to hand, and let's have a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Thank you very much. So I will turn to the Secretary General to make her opening remarks, and then we can begin. Secretary General, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Esteemed Standing Committee members, party representatives, non-party observers, ladies and gentlemen listening to us on YouTube. Thank you for your participation in the 73rd meeting of the Standing Committee. I hope that you and your families are keeping safe and well. This has been, as Carolina has just said, a very difficult year globally, and it's important to recognize how, in spite of all these difficulties, you have continued working diligently on the intersessional mandates. I wish to thank the Chair especially for her commitment to CITES and her support to the Secretariat for the preparations of this meeting. Also, my deepest thanks to the Secretariat staff who have made extraordinary efforts to manage working from home and keeping together their home lives these past 14 months and still maintain team cohesion. Today, we explore together new ground and look forward to learning good lessons from SC73 for the future. Early indications are that around 800 delegates from 97 parties and 110 organizations have registered for SC73, easily the largest participation in the history of the Standing Committee. And it is encouraging to see many parties who are rarely, if ever, able to attend standing committee meetings joining us this week. In order to help parties prepare for this meeting, the Secretariat organized 7 online regional briefing meetings hosted by the regional members concerned in the languages of the region. Over 200 representatives of management authorities took part in these informal exchanges, drawn from 93 different parties, and in the end, we think this exercise was well received. But we need your feedback, and thank you in advance for this feedback on all these new modalities for meetings, and we look forward to a good SC73 meeting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Secretary General. And I also want to thank the members of the committee who have identified themselves. So I see we do have quorum with representation from all of our regions. So thank you very much, committee. You can now clear the request list for me. So turning then to our agenda, the first item of the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. And as part of the adoption of the agenda, the parties will note that the Secretariat prepared an annotated agenda which provides some guidance as to what we intend to accomplish with each agenda item. So I will open the floor first to members of the Standing Committee for any questions or comments on the adoption of the agenda. And I will proceed to open the floor as well to observer parties. And to all observers present. So seeing no requests for the floor, the agenda is adopted. I need a gavel. Thank you, everyone. So we will then turn to the next item on the agenda. So this is SC72, Doc 2. This is the adoption of the working program. So the working program has been designed for the next 3 days for each 3-hour session. You can see we have some ambitions of quite a bit of information to cover, even though it is a smaller program than a typical face-to-face meeting. So with that, I will open the floor to any comments or questions from members of the committee. And I'll also open the floor to observer parties present. And open the floor to all present, including observers. Okay. Seeing no requests for the floor, I will take it that we have adopted the working program. And I will turn us to the next item on the agenda, which is the rules of procedure for this meeting. So Secretary General, I believe you wanted to provide a short introduction for this item, so please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, very briefly, I wish to draw your attention to document 3 and to document information document SC73 INF1. The rules of procedure of the committee were prepared with physical meetings in mind, as you are all aware. The application of some of the provisions we thought may need guidance in the context of an online meeting. For instance, the rules on credentials, on quorum, and on seating arrangements. So this is what the guidance on the application of the rules of procedure in an online meeting is aiming to provide in the information document. I would like to recall that last year around this time, the committees were consulted by email on the prospect of holding the planned meetings of the Animals and Plants committees online. And as part of this consultation, the Secretariat suggested that the rules of procedure of the committees would apply to the meetings if they were to be held online. It also provided a very first draft of a similar document to the one that is contained in Information Document 1. During the consultations of the committees, members and observer parties provided comments and questions on this first draft prepared by the Secretariat. These comments and questions have been taken into account in this information document. The Secretariat has aimed to keep it short and simple, and not to provide an alternative set of rules of procedure. However, the experience gained, of course, at this present meeting will provide the committee with a good basis to discuss whether there is a need to amend rules of procedure for their application in an online setting. We trust that the committee will be in a position to conduct its proceedings on the basis of the existing rules of procedure with this little extra guidance provided, but we stand ready as always to assist the committee in this respect. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Secretary General, for drawing everyone's attention to the guidance in the INF document, and noting that the rules of procedure for this meeting are those rules that were adopted at the 70th meeting of the Standing Committee. So I'll open the floor now to comments or questions, starting with members of the Standing Committee. And I see Israel is requesting to speak. So I would like to pass the floor to Israel, please. So I see on my list that Israel has the floor, and now has been released. So thank you, Axel. Perhaps you have some advice to provide?
Hello, yes, I just wanted to say that Israel should also just check the permission settings. So just look at the padlock icon at the top left-hand side and just make sure camera and microphone is set to allow, and then refresh. Thank you. I can see you on the floor now. Thank you.
Thank you. So Israel?
Also, Israel, I think you may have pressed release mic, which removes you from the floor. So please request to speak again, and then it should work.
We did have an opportunity to test Israel's connection earlier, so I'm hoping that.
Yes, so Simon from Israel, if you can see my screen, please check the permission settings and then refresh your browser and request to speak again, and then it should work. Thank you.
Perhaps while our colleague from Israel tests his permissions, I will open the floor to other members of the Standing Committee. And I will also see if there's comments from observer parties present. And finally, I will also open the floor to observers. Okay, seeing no other requests for the floor, I will turn back to Israel to see if we can hear your comments before we leave this agenda item. So I see our Perhaps Israel Shira, you could take the floor. Thank you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Okay. Apologies, everyone. Simon had issues with the connection. We just wanted to ask, Israel just wanted to ask about a limitation in terms of interventions, like number of minutes for each. I know Carolina mentioned to try to make them short, but if there's any guideline, that would be great to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Shira. I have not decided yet to set time limits for interventions. I am, many of our colleagues have participated often in these meetings, and it is, I find generally our tendency to ask our questions and get to our points quite quickly, so I didn't feel it necessary to set in advance a time limit for interventions. But of course, as per the rules of procedure, if I am concerned that we are running out of time, I may use my prerogative as chair to set such time limits. But at this stage, I have not asked, other than, of course, for people to be pithy in their remarks. Thank you, Israel. So I don't see any other requests for the floor. So perhaps I will, with the response to Israel, I will close on this, and we consider that we have adopted the rules of procedure. And so I will move us then to the next item on our agenda, which is the credentials. So the Secretary General, I believe you will provide us with an update. So you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Secretary would like to inform the participants attending the 73rd meeting of the Standing Committee that at present all 17 delegations of the members of the Standing Committee have provided their credentials. And so far, for the observer parties, we have received 68 letters of credentials/nominations. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Secretary General. So with that oral report, I will open the floor to members of the Standing Committee to see if you have any comments or questions for the Secretariat on that report. I'll also invite observer parties and observers. I have a request from Mauritania. So Mauritania, you have the floor.
Bonjour.
Can you hear me? Please continue. Okay, thank you. Now on the credentials, I have a few concerns about understanding that. Do the letters that designate and appoint the focal point, are they sufficient? Because I was told that otherwise it would be impossible to attend. What do I need to do? I'm at the meeting now, but I'd like to know how to explain to our focal point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mauritania. And I believe I heard this question in some of the regional meetings. So perhaps I could turn to the Secretariat to remind the parties and the committee members about the rules regarding credentials for this meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I ask Sophie Flensburg, our Secretariat colleague, to take the floor, please.
So Sophie, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mauritania, for this question. Generally, we ask parties to have letters of credentials so that we know that they have been provided with the authority to represent the country in the meeting of the Standing Committee. We have, since we wrote this rule in the Rules of Procedure, also introduced the nomination letters. And so for this meeting, we have agreed to accept nomination letters for those parties that are not members of the Standing Committee as letters of credential. And this is why the Secretary General referred to both of them in one go. So if you are here as a party that is not a member of the Standing Committee with a nomination letter, that would be sufficient for this meeting. And we will figure out how we do for further forthcoming meetings. I hope this is clarifying the situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Secretariat. I believe that does respond to Mauritania's question. So I will see if there's any other requests for the floor on the issue of credentials. Seeing no further requests for the floor, we will take note of the report and the comments from the Secretariat. So I will turn to the next item in our program, the admission of observers. So the committee is invited to note the observer organizations that have been invited to attend the meeting. And the list of observers is found in SC 73 Doc 5 on the CITES website. So I will see if there's any comments, starting with members of the Standing Committee on the list of observers. I will also open the floor to any observer parties. And finally, I will open the floor to observers present. Seeing no requests for the floor, the committee takes note of the observers invited. And thank you for joining us. With that, I will now turn to the next item on our agenda. The next item on our agenda is a report from the Finance and Budget Subcommittee. So I will be asking the acting chair, Switzerland Martin, of the Finance and Budget Subcommittee to please take the floor to provide this report. So Switzerland, you have the floor.
Chair, since the last reporting to the Standing Committee briefing session on 12th January 2021, the subcommittee has been involved in the following items. We did an approval of a one-time exceptional transfer from organization of meetings from 2020 into 2021 of an amount of US $280,700, which was approved by a postal voting. We did as well an exceptional approval to reduce the participation charges for the observers from US $100 to US $50 per observer organization delegate for online meeting in 2021 only, as noted in notification 2021/028 dated the 25th March 21. We noted as well the contribution from Switzerland to cover participants' charges up to 15,000 Swiss francs for the 73rd Standing Committee, the 31st Animals Committee, and the 25th Plants Committee, which will allow up to 2 speakers per observer organizations to participate in the meetings online. We decided as well on a reimbursement of connective charges as per UNEP guidelines will be offered to eligible SC members for their participation online during meetings in 2021. This will be not only for the Standing Committee, but it will be as well applied to the Animals and Plants Committee, which will be held later this year. As in line with COP18 Resolution 18.1 on financing and the COSTI Programme of Work of Millennium 2020-2022, paragraph 38, the Secretariat has informed the subcommittee that the UN Office of Internal Oversight Services audit is taking place during the period January to April 2021. And this will mainly happen in Nairobi, Kenya. The audit will cover the period from 1st January 2018 to 31st December 2020 and cover the following items: strategic management and governance, operations management, and finally, finance and administration. We understand that the final audit report from the Office of Internal Oversight is expected to be published in mid-summer 21. The subcommittee has also received regular reports on quarterly basis related to administrative and financial matters. The last reports refer to the period of 31st December to and March 21. Main concerns from that period are over-implementation rate of the approved budget for 2020 was 88%, which is good, but only 27.5% of contributions were collected for this year. Outstanding contributions for 2020 and prior years amount now to the amount of US $1.7 million. Just to note that all those quarterly reports on the item, how is CITES financed? Our subcommittee was consulted regarding the language strategy as per adopted COP decision 18.30, language strategy of the convention, mainly regarding cost implication of adding the 3 remaining UN official languages, which is Arabic, Chinese, and Russian, as working languages to the convention. Please allow me to make a correction to the documentation for the present meeting. It is, of course, Chinese and not Mandarin, which is spoken by 1.3 billion people. Apologies to the colleagues of China and Singapore. I will further elaborate on this item when we discuss agenda item 11 later. Our subcommittee will further continue its work and discuss through online means the following items. We will further consult and liaise with UNEP on the program support allocation policy and charges towards this budget line. Further, we will evaluate the next triennium budget proposal for 2023 to 2025, and if the Standing Committee gives us regarding these further instructions on the language strategy. Madam Chair, if you allow, this is ending my report for this sub-item, and I will now be open for questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Switzerland, and I do recommend that you stay on the floor should there be any questions on this item. So I will open the floor now to members of the Standing Committee for questions on the report provided by the Acting Chair of the Finance and Budget Subcommittee. So I will invite Standing Committee members to request the floor. And I will also open that invitation to observer parties. And again, I will invite standing committee members, observer parties, and I will also open the floor to observers present for questions on the report from the Finance and Budget Subcommittee. Okay. I have a request from China. So China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. China thanks the statement by the acting chair, and we would like to thank the acting chair to take note of the incorrect status in the report, which means that the Chinese speaker in word is 1.3 billion speakers in the world, and we appreciate that the Secretariat could correct this. Thank you.
Thank you, China. And thank you. And indeed, yes, we have taken note of your remarks and the correction. So I will again see if there are further requests for the floor from members of the committee or observer parties or observers present on the report from the Finance and Budget Subcommittee. Seeing no further requests for the floor, we take note of the report from the Finance and Budget Subcommittee, including the corrections noted by the acting chair. So with that, I will turn us to the next item in our program of work, which is item 11, Doc 11, on the language strategy. And I will again turn to the acting chair of the Finance and Budget Subcommittee, who I believe will introduce this report. So Martin, please, you have the floor. Oh, we lost you. I think you need to request the floor again.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead, please. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We have been asked to review and propose recommendations related to the language strategy for the convention. We have reviewed the Secretariat's prepared documentation on agenda item Standing Committee 37 Doc 11, which is proposing two options for a language strategy. First, complete integration of Arabic, Chinese, and Russian as languages of the convention at an estimated cost of US dollars 2.43 million for the triennium. This option is proposed to be funded from the General Core Trust Fund budget from the triennium, from the upcoming triennium 2023-2025. It will require a substantial increase of current budget levels or result in savings on other items. Second option proposed by the Secretariat is incremental language strategy that aims to identify, with the help of interested parties, to translate those documents which are regarded as a priority to facilitate the daily implementation of the work of the parties, national management, and scientific authorities mainly. This option would be subject to additional external funding from donors. As the options included has major financial impact for coming budget proposals, the subcommittee noted that its composition did not allow it to make a balanced assessment and recommendation in this regard. Currently, the wish was expressed that this matter requires further discussion and that further instructions from the Standing Committee on how to proceed with this matter are desired. So the subcommittee would also like to receive instructions from the Standing Committee whether it should continue its discussions and deliberation on the matter. Madam Chair, this is ending my introduction to this agenda item, and I'm sure that will take some further discussions. Thank you, Madam Chair. I submit.
Thank you, Chair of the Finance and Budget Subcommittee. So, committee, parties, observers, we have before us document 11 on the language strategy for the convention. And we've heard from in the document, some thoughts are given on options for moving forward. And we've heard from the Budget and Finance Subcommittee that further discussion or instruction on how to proceed would be welcome. And so with that, I will open the floor first to members of the Standing Committee to see if you have any comments, advice, or instructions to provide. So I see a request from the floor from Kuwait. So Kuwait, please. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank the Secretariat for the information in this document provided. As we all know, CITES Convention is one of the most important convention for the sustainable use of the biodiversity, and it is important to have better understanding to the convention by these countries, like most of the UN Convention, which is available in 6 languages. We understand the implication on budget with these 2 options provided by the Secretariat. So I would like to agree in the recommendation of the Finance and the Budget Subcommittee that this matter is required further discussion through that committee, or as well maybe an intersessional working group to have better view on this matter, and maybe more solution or option can be provided with that working group. So this is my suggestion in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Kuwait. I see now a request from Belgium. So Belgium, you have the floor, to be followed by Canada.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As it is the first time that Belgium speaks, we want to inform everyone that every time Belgium takes the floor, it's on behalf of the European Union and its member states. Regarding document 11, we want to thank the Secretariat for the thorough analysis that has been done, and we want to thank also the Finance and Budget Subcommittee for the first analysis. We feel that the translations in these languages could lead to a better understanding of the convention, but we need to keep in mind all the budgetary implications. For now, we would tend to support option 2, but we would also remind the Standing Committee that according to Resolution Conf 9.24, parties need to provide translations of listing proposals exceeding 12 pages into different official languages. Changing the language regime should not prevent parties from submitting documents due to the costs related to those translations. And we would therefore also request the Secretariat to inform the Standing Committee members at the next Standing Committee about these and maybe other potential implications for parties related to those additional translation requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Belgium. I will now take the intervention from Canada. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Canada recognizes the importance of having key CITES implementation documents available in all UN languages. However, we are concerned that the capacity is not available to fully implement their integration into the work of CITES at this point. As such, Canada would like to support the incremental approach that is proposed. Canada also appreciates the contribution of parties with respect to the translations of key documents. However, it is important for the Secretariat to have the capacity to validate the translations in current or additional languages to ensure consistency with the official versions. Canada would also like to better understand the Secretariat's current language strategy for implementation of the 3 official languages and how it will be impacted by even the partial implementation of 3 more languages. For example, how does the Secretariat verify translated documents for consistency with the original language? And how does it coordinate the ever-increasing volume of meeting documents? Would the added working languages be added to permits and certificates? And if so, what are the best approaches to maintain efficient implementation and enforcement by all parties? We suggest that the Secretariat provides this information to the meeting of the Standing Committee at its 74th meeting. This would be part of a broader debate on CITES' language strategy over the long term to better engage parties that operate outside of the current 3 official languages. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canada. I will see if there are any more requests from members of the Standing Committee. And I will also open the floor to observer parties present. So I have a request from the United States. So the United States, you have the floor.
Can you hear me? Yes? Great, fantastic. First, we'd like to thank the Secretariat for all of its work and the Chair. Thank you, Chair, for putting this meeting together, and we're happy to be joining you again. We have several things to say about this agenda item 11. First of all, we object to the characterization that the FBSC desires further instruction from the committee on how to proceed. The committee has already tasked the FBSC to provide advice back to the committee based on the Secretariat's budgetary analysis, since the financial implications of adding working languages to the convention are fundamental to any further discussion. The United States believes the FBSC can and must discuss the options laid out in the Secretariat's analysis and should do so by convening an intersessional virtual discussion among FBSC members in order for the FBSC to ask questions of the Secretariat on their analysis. We believe the Standing Committee will not have adequate information on the implications of the proposed language strategy without the FBSC discussing the matter and informing the committee of its recommendations. So we may have a further intervention, but for now I'll stop there, and thank you, Chair, and others.
Thank you, United States. And I see requests from the floor from China, which will be followed by Japan and Korea. So China, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, China would like to thank the Secretariat for preparing the comprehensive and detailed report, which has provided a good foundation for discussion under this agenda item. As is known to all, multilingualism is an important enabler for multilateral diplomacy. The United Nations and other international organizations have made unremitting efforts in promoting multilingualism within their system. And the United Nations Assembly has adopted a series of resolutions in this regard. Arabic, Chinese, and Russian have a large number of users worldwide, among which Chinese is the most widely used language with over 1.3 billion users in the world. Promoting the multilingualism on the CITES and providing ecosystem for the 6 languages will further enhance the implementation and the influence of the convention worldwide, and will advance the global protection of endangered species of wild fauna and flora. Language strategy concerns the equality of the languages and the equal and effective participation of representatives of relevant countries in the convention's process. It also concerns the understanding of the convention by people of relevant countries. Regrettably, Arabic, Chinese, and Russian users have long been unfairly treated under convention. This should be changed. The report has provided 2 options for language strategy. China supports the first one, namely the complete inclusion of Arabic, Chinese, and Russian as working languages of the convention. We believe that this option helps to ensure equality of 6 languages best and satisfy the demand of Arabic, Chinese, and Russian users. China is willing to participate constructively in this process, working closely with other member states to improve the practice of multilingualism under this convention. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, China. So I have requests, as mentioned, from Japan, which will be followed by Korea, and then Switzerland. Japan, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the acting chair of the subcommittee. Government, my delegation is not I would like to state the following. The option 1 is not the option for us because of the cost involved, both direct and indirect. And also the option 2 need to be carefully, further carefully reviewed in order to achieve the efficient use of resources within the CITES Secretariat, because the indirect cost, transactional cost need to be carefully reviewed. And that has to be done before the moving on to the alternative option 2. My delegation is ready to further engage if necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. And I will turn now to the floor to Korea, which will be followed by Switzerland, Matthias. So Korea, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First of all, on behalf of the government of the Republic of Korea, I would like to express our gratitude to the CITES Secretariat and the Swiss government for preparing the Standing Committee amid this COVID-19 crisis. As the agenda document suggests, the Korean delegation agrees with the fundamental value of increasing the number of working languages of the convention in terms of the spirit of multilingualism enshrined in United Nations General Assembly Resolution 71/328, as well as the way to strengthen implementation of the convention. However, we can also see the high possibility that significant cost implications caused by adding Arabic, Chinese, and Russian to the existing working languages. We expect that this would lead to its parties' financial burdens. Accordingly, we would like to call upon the Secretariat to adopt the best strategy to minimize the cost out of the strategies presented below the paragraph 13 on the agenda document. Lastly, as a party which does not use the UN official languages, we also would like to call for the Secretariat and the Standing Committee's attention by expressing following concerns. We are worried that the increase in working languages could be bringing about notable financial and administrative burden of the parties which does not use the UN official languages. For example, our concern is that there might be a possibility that the existing burdens of interpreting or understanding the CITES working languages would be rising further. However, the current document does not analyze these issues. In this regard, we believe that if the Secretariat and Standing Committee truly consider those issues to decrease each party's burden, the introduction of the 3 additional working languages will facilitate implementation of the convention. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Republic of Korea. I will take the request from Switzerland. Sir Matthias, please, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Nous soutenons le président du sous-comité qui estime que...
Thank you, Madam Chair. We support the view given by the chair of the Finance and Budget Subcommittee. This might not be the best forum for us to discuss this issue. If the committee feels that the subcommittee should continue its discussion on this matter, we would welcome, Madam Chair, that we include representatives of speakers of Russian and Arabic, since they are affected by any decision taken on this matter. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Switzerland, for your comments and for your suggestion. I will see if there are further requests from the floor, starting with parties. And of course, members of the Standing Committee. So I have a request from Georgia and then again from the United States. So Georgia, please.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Yes. So thank you for the document prepared and the comprehensive analysis. We really appreciate the work undertaken. But we had a couple of comments concerning the language strategy, really, the costs and the general implications, because we think that it may have, as already mentioned by some parties, other implications, for instance, on enforcement, because accepting the another working language would imply possibility of filling the permits in the working language. So it would cause additional burden on other countries to accept such permits, for instance, filled in the Arabic or Chinese languages in our case. So that should be discussed, I assume, at another fora, for instance, at the Conference of the Parties. So I would just accept this document for information purposes and discuss it later. And of course, we should also have in mind timing of translations, because if we receive documents in other official languages, it may increase timing of translations into other languages, so that would reduce the time we get the documents before the meeting. So that's also another thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgia. I will take the request from the United States, please. The United States.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor once again. Just to be clear, we wanted to just have a few more points on this agenda item. Because of the substantial costs associated with implementation of additional working languages and existing demands on the core budget, the United States opposes adoption of additional official languages of the convention. We're also concerned that a change in CITES could set a precedent for other conventions with similar budget implications. With respect to the proposed incremental language strategy, our view is that language services of the convention are an inherently core function and therefore must be accommodated in the core budget of the convention. The FBSC has not yet provided its advice to the Standing Committee, and therefore we believe it would be premature for the Standing Committee to address the language strategy at the current meeting. We believe the Standing Committee will not have adequate information on the implications of the proposed language strategy without the FBSC discussing the matter, including in a virtual session, and informing the SC of its recommendations. Lastly, although not discussed in the Secretariat's report, adding languages to the convention would come with practical challenges and costs to all parties that would result from additional working languages, including the need to build capacity for management authorities, scientific authorities, and enforcement authorities to monitor it and enforce trade that occurs under permits issued using additional working languages. Thank you so much.
Thank you, United States. And indeed, I am seeing that there's a lot of questions and some desire for further information. I'll remind us, of course, that it's not the committee's prerogative to make a decision on this, but rather we are reporting any recommendations we may have to the COP. But I am hearing from parties that there's some questions, some desire to do some further in-depth analysis, particularly of the financial costs, but also some potential administrative burdens that have been raised by Korea, Canada, and others. So I am mindful of these interventions while I continue to seek interventions from standing committee members, from parties, and also from observers who are present. I see a request from Senegal. Senegal, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would tend to agree with those parties who feel that additional languages would cause additional work burden and would be difficult to manage. We have official languages which have allowed us to operate up until now, and as you have just said, Madam Chair, this is not a decision for our committee. We can only note that these questions have been raised and refer the matter to our COP. We feel that multilingualism is a good thing in diplomacy. However, we must not overburden our convention. We have been able to work well with English, French, and Spanish. Additional languages would be a problem, I feel. Thank you.
So I will do one last check for the floor. I open the floor to all parties, standing committee member parties, and observers present for any other comments on document 11 and the language strategy for the convention. Okay, seeing no request for the floor, I will try to come to a conclusion, and then I will turn to the Standing Committee members to see if you are agreeable to my conclusions. So first of all, with respect to the document, we thank the Secretariat for preparing the document and bringing some ideas forward. However, we would ask the Finance and Budget Subcommittee to take a more detailed look at in particular, as per their mandate, the cost implications of adopting a language strategy, as well as the tiered approach suggested in the document, and indeed any other approaches that may arise in the course of your discussions. In particular, the Finance and Budget Subcommittee should have the opportunity to review these costs and ask questions and get some more information from the Secretariat regarding the implication of these costs or how they are determined, so that the Finance and Budget Subcommittee could present a more detailed analysis of the financial costs of this to the committee. In addition, however, I also note that concerns and questions were raised about possible administrative impacts. I heard a question from Belgium about the implication on some of the requirements in Resolution 9.24. Canada had some questions about the current language strategy, and then in terms of managing documentation. Korea also had some questions about administrative burden. And there were also questions about the potential administration or burden that may be passed to parties in trying to manage additional languages. So I would ask the Secretariat to prepare a document to answer those questions and share that as well with the Finance and Budget Subcommittee as part of their deliberations. And then I would suggest that those analyses be returned to the Standing Committee at its 74th meeting for our review, and any recommendations or conclusions we may wish to take in order to provide those to the Conference of the Parties. This would be my suggestion, and I will look for reactions to that, and I will start by seeing if our acting chair has any reactions. So Martin, please, from Switzerland, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Il est facile de parler des langues quand on peut avoir cette discussion dans sa langue maternelle. Madame la Présidente, si vous pouviez conclure que la proposition de la Suisse
Thank you, Madam. It is easier to discuss these matters in a mother tongue, I feel. And I do think that it is useful that we bear in mind the need for us to discuss matters with our Russian and Arabic speakers committee so that we better prepare this discussion in the future. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Switzerland. I admit the translation for me cut out for a little bit, but I understood you do agree that it's a good opportunity to discuss further with the committee. I believe you were asking about also ensuring that we have the opportunity, the Finance and Budget Subcommittee has the opportunity to also discuss with the Russian, Arabic, and Chinese language speakers, if I understand correctly. And so I quickly opened up the membership, and I note Kuwait is a member of your committee, but there is no Russian or Chinese representative on the subcommittee. Am I correct in that? And so I wonder if when it comes time for the Budget and Finance Subcommittee to have a discussion on this point with the Secretariat, if the committee is agreeable, if we invite also Russia and China to attend, and participate in this part of this discussion regarding language strategy and the analysis of the costs of language strategy. First of all, I will double check with the chair of the Finance and Budget Subcommittee to see if that is what you were proposing, and then I will also take reactions from standing committee members.
Yes, Madam Chair, exactly. That's what we were proposing, because we are of the opinion that we have a more inclusive discussion, and we might come to a clearer picture, on where we should head for. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Requests from parties, which I will take. So I will start with Yemen, please. Yemen, we are unable to hear you, and I wonder if perhaps you need to check your permissions. And so I'll ask you to look in the messaging area under technical support for support from our Kudo colleagues to help you ensure that you have access to your camera and microphone so we can hear your intervention. While you sort that out, I will take the intervention from Japan. Japan, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Somewhat the communication was cut off for some time, but I have missed something. But my question at this point is that the chair of the subcommittee mentioned that the representatives from China and Russia participate in the subcommittee. And my question here is: in what capacity? Is it in the capacity as the observer, or is capacity as equal to the member? If such being the case, I think the other interest party may wish to participate one way or the other. So I'm still not clear what the current composition of the subcommittee is and what's for the future. I don't know whether continuation or discussion on the subcommittee or the standing committee for this particular purpose will be will fit for the purpose. I don't know. I mean, I'm open to discuss further, but my immediate question for the time being is if the Chinese and Russian are to be involved, what would be the capacity for them, and would that open the door for others? These are the questions for the time being. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Japan. So the members of the Finance and Budget Subcommittee consists of 2 representatives from Africa, which are currently Kenya and Namibia, one representative from each of the other CITES regions, plus the depository government. And so currently the representatives are, actually I think Kuwait, Peru and Honduras, Israel, the United States, New Zealand, Switzerland, as well as Kenya and Namibia. I heard from the chair of the Finance and Budget Subcommittee that for the purposes of the discussion regarding the language strategy and the associated costs with the language strategy, that he would like to invite China and Russia as the main language speakers of the 2 of the other 3 languages being considered, noting that Kuwait has the Arabic language, to also contribute to the conversation. They will not be members of the Finance and Budget Subcommittee, as that committee has been established by the Standing Committee. And so in that sense, I believe they will participate as observers for this one point. I'm suggesting that these 2 members participate as observers because of the languages being discussed. However, Japan, I do recognize your interest in the discussions overall. I am wondering if it would be worthwhile if we ensure that parties provide their representative on the Finance and Budget Subcommittee and or Switzerland as the acting chair any particular detailed questions or comments or issues that they would like the Finance and Budget Subcommittee to pay particular attention to, so that you can ensure your concerns are addressed. And then the Finance and Budget Subcommittee will undertake these deliberations and return to the committee with the results of those deliberations. So we here, including observer parties, will have the opportunity to see the results of those financial discussions and further details that we are asking of them. So that is the proposal I have for moving forward. And I will again see if there are comments from any of the participating countries, standing committee members. I will also invite comments from observers. And I note that Yemen remains on my list, and so I wonder if perhaps the issue with Yemen's connection has been resolved, and I can take your comments. That does not seem to be resolved. Yemen, again, I will encourage you to use the messaging to speak with technical support. And of course, if there is an issue, you can always provide your comments in the messaging service, and I will ask the Secretariat to alert me to any of those comments. So I will do one last sweep for any reactions to my proposed way forward, which I will repeat so we're all clear. I see a request from Russia, please. So Russia, you have the floor. I'm sorry, Russia, but I cannot hear you. Can you confirm that your microphone is on? Sorry, apologies. If the technicians could help Russia, please ensure that your microphone is functional, that you've chosen the correct one through your settings.
Hello, Olga. This is Axel from Kudo. So we cannot hear you currently. So could you please go to the settings at the bottom of the platform? There's a cogwheel icon. And then from there, you can select media settings. And then just make sure that you have your headset selected from there. I can share my screen if you'd like to also. So if you see my screen currently, if you press that settings button at the bottom of the platform, you will see this window, and then just select media settings and then go through microphone and speaker. I believe you can hear us now. So just only microphone there. Just select your headset. Thank you. As a temporary fix, you might also be better off just unplugging your headset and just using the built-in microphone. Please go ahead and write if you like to. I can also share my screen if you want to.
Perhaps while you attempt to sort this problem, I've quickly turned to the messages section, and I note that we had Yemen provide their comment in writing. So Yemen has indicated that they have a number of issues in their country with concerns as well with smugglers and animal dealers. And so they have some questions to the Secretariat about their role in situations of war, which I will leave for the Secretariat to respond to you directly offline. There are questions about the conditions for updating the animals and plants lists in CITES. So that is our COP procedure, and I will ask the Secretariat to address that question directly with Yemen as well. And then with respect to the point on the table, they have indicated that adding the Arabic language has become necessary. So they see support for continuing the discussion on the language strategy. So I will see if there is a possibility now, if the issue has been resolved with Russia. Unfortunately not. Kuwait, in the meantime, Kuwait has asked for the floor. So I'm hoping we have a path forward, but perhaps, Sharifa, you have some good advice for us. So Kuwait, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm that we agree with the way forward you just recommend for the committee, and we are very satisfied to that option. Thank you.
Thank you, Kuwait. I appreciate your support. I am mindful that our colleagues from Russia, that I did volunteer them to participate with the Finance and Budget Subcommittee conversation. So I will take another minute to see if the issue can be resolved or if a message is being provided via the messaging service. And then I will look to conclude this discussion. So I see a comment from Canada. So Canada, please. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. It takes a second to come online. So Canada would like to express our support for the way forward that you have proposed, Chair. It seems reasonable, and it will give the Finance Subcommittee as well as the Standing Committee an opportunity to discuss this in more detail at a later time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canada. And so I believe I'm ready to close this item. I am just pending to see if a comment comes from our Russian colleague. Yes, please.
Madam Chair, she has written that she will send her opinion in writing. I just have clarified to her that she should put it in the chat now, so you may share it. Let's wait another second or two, if you don't mind.
Thank you. And in the
thank you.
While we wait for that final comment, for the rapporteurs for conclusion, we will be asking the Finance and Budget Subcommittee, with the membership of the Finance and Budget Subcommittee, to invite as well China, Standing Committee member China and Standing Committee member of the Russian Federation, to join them as observers, and in their discussions on a more detailed financial analysis of the proposed language strategies outlined in document 11, and as well as any other approach that they may decide during the course of their discussions. We will also be asking the Secretariat to prepare a document outlining in more detail some of the potential administrative costs that may be borne either by parties or by the Secretariat related to an updated or different language strategy. So this includes the points raised by Belgium, Canada, Korea, Senegal, and others. And to provide that documentation to the Finance and Budget Subcommittee as well as part of their considerations. And then we will ask for those items to be reported back, including the conclusions or the results of the discussions of the Finance and Budget and Subcommittee to the 74th meeting of the Standing Committee. So I am going to, with apologies to our Russian colleagues, as I don't see your comments yet, but I am going to conclude this item with those decisions and look forward to your participation in the future. Thank you, and again, apologies as we all adapt and learn and have some patience with these systems. So with that, I will move us then to the next item on our agenda, if I can find it. Aha, here we go. So now we are on agenda item 8 of our working program, so reports from the scientific committees. So I will start first by inviting the report from the Animals Committee. And I will turn to Switzerland. Matthias, to please take the floor. If someone could please pass the floor to Switzerland. Matthias, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, the face-to-face meeting of the 31st face-to-face meeting of the Animals Committee could not take place in 22. It will take place later this month and early June. At the instruction of the chair of the Animals Committee, the Secretariat initiated a procedure for intersessional decision-making, which was published in a notification to the parties. The committee also established 6 intersessional working groups and agreed on their terms of reference. Results of this work will also be presented at the upcoming meeting. The members met twice in a virtual setting to agree on a roadmap for the intersessional work for 2020 and 21 and to review progress on this roadmap. The Animals Committee also agreed that several items of its work plan could benefit from informal discussion between members and invited experts who could be consulted on an ad hoc basis, for example, when a study or a report became available for review. However, none of these discussion groups really materialized, and therefore nothing can be reported on this issue here. On review of significant trade, and review of traded animal specimens reported as produced in captivity. Discussion of ongoing cases is still on its way and will be reported in the upcoming AC meeting. Concerning the selection of new species country combination under both of these processes, it was decided that no new cases would be selected for review in the event of a virtual meeting scenario. The next round of cases selected for review will therefore occur at the first meeting of the Animals Committee after COP19. In early 2020, the Animals Committee was further consulted whether a transfer of live elephant specimens from Appendix 2 population to an XC2 location, as well as on an objection raised by a party on a registration to breed Falco pellegrinoides and Falco peregrinus for commercial purposes. Finally, the Animals Committee provided input to assist the Secretariat in identifying priorities for additional or improved NDF guidance materials and for addressing apparent gaps. The nomenclature specialist of the Animals Committee also worked to progress on the nomenclatural task assigned to the Animals Committee by COP18. In addition, he also has provided advice on nomenclatural matters to the Secretariat and parties. The results will also be presented at the upcoming AC meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair of the Animals Committee. So I will now open the floor to any questions or comments regarding the report from the Animals Committee Chair, and I will start with members of the Standing Committee. I will also invite members, observer parties, if they have any questions or comments regarding the report of the Animals Committee. And finally, I will open the floor to all participants, including observers present at the meeting, and invite any comments or questions you may have with respect to the report of the Animals Committee. I will do a small reminder to please ensure that you indicate your organization in your naming convention when you join the meeting, so I am aware of which organizations are asking for the floor. So I see a request from HSI, Ron Ornstein. So please, you have the floor, Ron.
Hang on. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Okay. Just as the chair mentioned that they had not set up the informal working groups that had been referred to in the prior document, I would just like to get some confirmation that if such groups are set up in future, that they will be transparent and that observers will be invited to join them as well, just to keep the transparency of the meeting as it should be. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, HSI. And before I turn back to the chair, I will see if there are other comments. So I have a request from William Travers. I believe that is Born Free. I am not certain. So please indicate your organization before beginning your intervention. With that, I will turn the floor then to William Travers.
There we go. There we go. Thank you very much, Chair. Firstly, I should say that I'm speaking on behalf of the Species Survival Network, and I just want to thank you and the Government of Switzerland, the Secretary General, and the Secretariat for all their incredible hard work in being able to pull this together. This intervention is made on behalf of SSN and the following organizations: the Center for International Environmental Law, Born Free Foundation, the Center for Biological Diversity, Sea Shepherd Legal, AAP, that's Animal Advocacy and Protection, David Shepherd Wildlife Foundation, Eurogroup for Animals, the Franz Weber Foundation, Humane Society International, the Environmental Investigation Agency, Four Paws International, Pro Wildlife, Environmental Investigation Agency US, and the Natural Resources Defense Council. Madam Chair, I'll be as brief as I possibly can. Clearly, we are in uncharted territory as we adapt our meetings in light of the pandemic. And so our intervention refers to the rules of procedure for Animals Committee and Plants Committee. Currently, these rules contain nothing about transparency in voting procedures. So this may not have been an issue during face-to-face meetings in the past, but the possibility, as we're all aware, of more virtual meetings requires that transparency of voting be enshrined, we believe and recommend, in the rules of procedure. Our organizations therefore encourage the committees, in order to ensure transparency, to amend their rules of procedure to require votes to be recorded and the results made public, whether votes are taken during in-person or virtual meetings or via postal procedures. For votes that occur via postal procedure, we recommend that such votes be reported, including the vote of each region, via the same notification that reports the result of the vote, and that a brief accounting of the vote be reported at the following meeting of the committee. We also strongly recommend that these changes should also be reflected in the rules of procedure for the Standing Committee. And I should confirm, Madam Chair, that we will provide this intervention in writing to the CITES Secretariat, so that if I was a bit quick, you have it verbatim. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Will, on behalf of SSN. And I caught your intervention very well. And so you're providing advice to all the committees to review their rules of procedure to provide for a recording of votes, be it in person or postal procedures. I see no other requests for the floor right now, so I will turn back to Switzerland, to the chair of the Animals Committee, for any comments or reactions you have to those interventions. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I mainly can respond to the question from HSI. It is clear that these discussion groups, they would be transparent. We know who, from our experience, Secretariat, from its experience, and myself as chair, which organizations on what topics are providing input, are important to listen to. So you can be assured that if we still are able to create such a discussion group, we will certainly make it transparent, and we'll make sure that all voices are being heard. This being said, we have already discussed with the Secretariat whether and when we will open up such discussion groups, but at the moment I don't know if we will have anything going on until the next meeting, which will be in a month's time. So I don't think we need to worry about that at this stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair of the Animals Committee. So before I close this item, I will see if there are any further requests for the floor. Okay, seeing no further requests for the floor, the Standing Committee takes note of the report of the Animals Committee. And so I will turn next to the report of the Plants Committee. Before I do, I will take a quick pause to note that we did receive the message from our Russian colleagues regarding the previous agenda item. So in these most unusual times, I will take a moment to read this so we can ensure that it is found in the summary record. I apologize to the rapporteurs, as normally we do things in order, but as we have all recognized, we are adapting to this virtual world. And so our colleagues from the Russian Federation unconditionally support the inclusion of Arabic, Chinese, and Russia as working languages of CITES. CITES is a respected international organization under the umbrella of the United Nations. These languages are UN languages. We agree that some aspects of translation and cost may complicate the work, but it will make it easier to understand. Details on registration of permits and certificates for export, re-export can be discussed in working order. So I take from that intervention that our Russian colleagues are also willing to participate in a more detailed, in-depth discussion of the potential administrative and financial costs of a new language strategy. So thank you to the Russian Federation. So with that, I will turn us back to the Plants Committee. Report of the Plants Committee. So I am looking at document 8.2. And I will invite the chair of the Plants Committee floor to take the floor. Gabon, if we could pass the floor to Gabon, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and following consultations between members of the Plants Committee and the Secretariat, the 25th meeting of the Plants Committee was cancelled in 2020. Nevertheless, with the support of the Secretariat, the Plants Committee reviewed its work programme and was able to put into effect decisions made at the 18th Conference of the Parties. I submit to the Standing Committee document 8.2, SC 73 Doc 8.2, which provides an update of the activities carried out intersessionally by the Plants Committee that I chair. I would invite the Standing Committee to take note of this document. In paragraphs 3 to 6 of the document SC 73 Doc 8.2, we present the decisions made intersessionally by the Plants Committee. In particular, the establishment of 6 working groups for the identification of timber and other wood products, rosewood tree species, neotropical tree species, trade in medicinal and aromatic plant species, and identification materials, which was carried out jointly with the Animals Committee. Paragraph 7 includes details on informal consultations held in preparation for PC25. The conclusions of these consultations are available in the addenda published on our website under PC25. I would invite participants to this meeting to consult them and the revised recommendations. Paragraph 8 of document SC 73 8.2 refers to the status of Pterocarpus erinaceus, and the updates are available in the addendum of document PC25 Doc 15.5. At the 25th meeting, the Plants Committee will review the annex of this document and, if necessary, will decide which combination of Pterocarpus erinaceus and country should be included in stage 2 of the review of significant trade process. Madam Chair, before I conclude, I would like to thank all the members of the committee for the excellent work that has been carried out on our work programme in advance of the 25th meeting of the Plants Committee, which will be held online in June 2021. I would also like to thank the Secretariat for having supported me in my role as a novice chair of the Plants Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair of the Plants Committee. And welcome to your role in these most unusual times. So I will see if there's any requests, starting with standing committee members. Any questions or requests for the floor with regard to the report from the chair of the Plants Committee? I see a request from Canada. So Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I am speaking on behalf of the North American region. The region supports noting the reports of the chairs of the Animals and the Plants Committees. In particularly, we would like to thank the chairs and committee members in continuing these important discussions during this challenging intersessional period caused by the pandemic. We look forward to returning to normal procedures as soon as possible, although that still seems somewhat far away at this point. We also appreciate the ongoing efforts and stress the importance to ensure transparency and meaningful opportunity for engagement from all stakeholders and regions in developing recommendations that move forward from these committees to the Standing Committee and the COP. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canada. I will see if there's any other requests from Standing Committee members, and I will also open the floor to parties. So I see a request from the United States. So the United States, please, you have the floor.
No, sorry. This wasn't, I think I'm the wrong person that was requesting the floor. So I will pass. Thanks.
No problem. We're all getting adopted here. Thank you, United States. Any further requests from the floor from committee members, parties, and I'll also open the floor to observers present. Okay, so I see no further requests from the floor. So thank you very much, Chair of the Plants Committee. The Standing Committee has taken note of the report from the Chair of the Plants Committee.
Merci.
Merci, Fleur. And with that, our attention now to agenda item 9 of the working program. So this is on rules of procedure for the Conference of the Parties. And so Canada myself has been chairing an intersessional working group on rules of procedure. The Standing Committee was directed to review Rules 7.2a and Rule 25 of the Conference of the Parties Rules of Procedure. In the deliberations within the working group provided a proposed amendment to Rule 7.72a regarding the composition of the Conference of the Parties Credentials Committee. In addition, the Intersessional Working Group provided a proposed amendment to Rule 25.5, the treatment of amendments to proposals to amend the appendices or species proposals. And the Intersessional Working Group also reviewed Rule 25.6, which provides guidance to the chair of the Conference of the Parties on the treatment of proposals, in particular when there are 2 or more proposals relating to the same taxon. For this latter rule, in the discussion, there were some key points that the working group felt important to address, such as ensuring that there was a clear understanding of what the implications were of adoption of proposal, and ensuring that all proposals had the opportunity to be introduced and discussed. The working group, the general view of the working group members was that the order the proposals should be discussed, start with the most restrictive, although giving the chair some flexibility in this regard. And that, in particular, if there was a partial overlap between proposals, that any remaining species, subspecies, populations that had not been put to decision be submitted for decision. So these are the key elements that the chair incorporated into a proposed amendment to Rule 25.6. But as noted in my report, the working group at the time of submission had not had the opportunity to react to those latter proposals. Subsequent to that submission of this document, some insights were received from 4 members of the working group, proposing some modifications to Rule the proposal by the chair on the modifications to Rule 25.6 in terms of order and language. And so at this time, the Standing Committee is invited to agree to the amendments to Rule 7.2a, as well as the amendments to Rule 25.5 and 25.6 that relate to the treatment of amendments provided on the floor. And the Standing Committee is also invited to consider the amendments proposed to Rule 25.6 in paragraph 14 of this document and provide any advice to the working group as to continue their deliberations or to conclude. So that is the question before the Standing Committee right now, and all of the proposed amendments are found in the annex to the document. So with that, I will first open the floor to Standing Committee members who, for your comments and reactions on the conclusions of this working group. So I see a request from Indonesia, please.
Indonesia thanks the Chair and the Secretariat for organizing this meeting in this difficult situation. Indonesia appreciates works carried out by Intersessional Working Group on Rules of Procedure. Regarding Rule 7.2, Indonesia endorsed Working Group's recommendation to increase the number of representatives on the Credentials Committee from 5 to 6 members so that the committee is able to represent 6 regions where CITES operates. Regarding Rule 25.6, Indonesia would like to present a different view. At this stage, we believe that changing the current rule is not an urgent matter, because with the current Rule 25.6, CITES meetings and works are running smoothly. The current rule of procedure, in which parties decide on the amendment that has the least restrictive effect on the trade in the species, and then on the amendment with the next least restrictive effect, has served the convention well for years. There is no problem caused by this rule in previous meetings. Indonesia therefore agrees to propose amendment to Rule 7.2 to COP19. On the other hand, proposal to amend Rule 25.6 needs more further deliberation. We are looking forward to having constructive and fruitful discussion on this matter with other delegates. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Indonesia. And I now see requests from New Zealand, followed by Belgium and Canada. So New Zealand, please.
Thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa, greetings from Aotearoa, New Zealand on behalf of the Oceania region. We thank the working group for its careful deliberations and its recommendations on the rules of procedure for the COP. The Oceania region is happy to recommend the proposed amendments to Rule 7.2a and 25.5 to COP19. However, we do support continued deliberations on Rule 25.6 and the order of proposals. On the amendments proposed for Rule 7.2a, we consider that enabling 6 representatives from different parties to participate on the Credentials Committee better reflects the regional makeup of the convention and is an appropriate amendment. We do note, however, that for small regions in which party delegations are also small, such as Oceania, it can be difficult to resource the Credentials Committee, and the current wording "up to" is important to retain flexibility and address the situation where a region decides it cannot contribute to the Credentials Committee due to resourcing constraints. So we do seek that the wording up to is retained. On Rule 25.6, we note the working group advises its deliberations are not complete. In relation to the order of proposals, our clear preference is that when two proposals cover the same species, the more restrictive is considered first. We accept, however, that there may be cases when the two proposals have different sorts of restrictions, and an exception, as proposed by the working group chair, may be necessary in these cases. We suggest that the working group consider this matter further, and that it would be very useful if the working group could provide working examples of proposals with different restrictions covering the same species to illustrate how the revised Rule 25.6 might work in effect. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. My next request is from Belgium, which will be followed by Canada and then Peru. So Belgium, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Regarding document 9 on the rules of procedure of the COP, we thank the working group for their extensive work on revising some of the issues we had at the last COP. And we support the proposed changes to Rule 7.2a and Rule 25.5. Regarding Rule 25.6, we support the changes, in particular to vote first on the most restrictive proposals. And on the voting order, we want to stress that any change in the voting order would need to be exceptional and duly justified by the chair in the meeting why she or he thinks it is appropriate. Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Belgium. I will turn to Canada, followed by Peru.
Thank you very much, Chair. I am speaking on behalf of the North American region. We thank the working group for advancing this important work. With regards to the recommendation in paragraph 17 of the document, the North American region agrees with the proposed amendments to Rule 7.2a, 25.5, and 25.6, and agrees these be submitted to the COP for its consideration. With regards to the recommendations included in paragraph 18, the North American region has reviewed the proposed amendments and generally agrees with the recommendation to consider the most restrictive proposal first. The North American region also agrees that the addition of flexibility to the chair to modify the order in which proposals are considered, if appropriate, is a good idea. Finally, the region agrees with the intent of the final modification to ensure proposals of all taxon are given due consideration by the COP. However, we proposed a modified formulation for clarity, and I will read that. It starts at the paragraph that starts with if, in relation to the same taxon, the adoption of one proposal necessarily implies the rejection of another proposal, the latter proposal shall nevertheless be submitted to decision in relation to the remaining taxon. We feel this achieves the same intent as the chair's proposed language, but it's simpler to understand, and I could provide the text in writing in the chat so that you have it for the records. The North American region appreciates the work of the working group and is satisfied with the proposed amendments to Rule 25.6. As such, we would support concluding the work of the working group at this point and also supporting the proposed amendments to Rule 25.6 with our edit, if acceptable to the committee, for consideration by the Conference of the Parties. Finally, on behalf of Canada, as the chair of this working group, we extend our thanks to all the working group members for their contributions in advancing this important issue and for the constructive discussions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canada. I'll turn now to Peru, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Speaking as representative of the Central American and Caribbean region, we would like to express our agreement with 7.2, and we would agree with the proposal made. We would agree with this proposal. With respect to the changes proposed on 25.6, we are still considering these issues, and we are not in a position to give you our views on that proposal. I would like to thank the working group for everything that has been done to move this discussion forward. We have been able to work together very constructively. Thank you.
Thank you, Peru. And I will see if there is any other members of the committee who wish to take the floor, and also open the floor to party observers present. So I see a request from India. India, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving us an opportunity of expressing our point of view. I hope I'm audible, ma'am. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, while fully agreeing to the amendment to Rule 7.2 to increase the number of representatives on the Credentials Committee from 5 to 6 to ensure that all the 6 geographic regions of the CITES where it is being operated can be represented. We welcome this, and we actually believe it's a very good change. And while doing so, however, we would like to point out that we see as a slight inconsistency in the treatment of proposals as a result of the proposed amendments to Rules 25.5 and Rules 25.6. As a result of the proposed amendment to Rule 25.5, when one party proposes an on-site amendment to reduce the scope of another party's proposal, that is to make a proposal less restrictive, this amendment will be considered first and will supersede the original proposal if accepted. On the other hand, as a result of the proposed change to Rule 25.6, when two parties have submitted substantially different proposals relating to the same taxon well in advance of a COP, in accordance with the document deadline of the convention, the more restrictive proposal will be considered first. The scenario, as it evolves now after the proposed change, seems to favor on-site amendments to reduce the scope of proposals rather than original proposals submitted before the document deadline. The committee and the working group has done a tremendous job, but from our side, we would like to request the committee and the working group may wish to take this into consideration in their deliberation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, India, and I'm happy to provide some clarifications on that rule and on the intent of reducing the scope, which is not necessarily to be more or less restrictive. It will depend on the original proposal. And so I'll provide that clarification in a minute, but first I think I will take the intervention from Kenya. We appear to have lost Kenya. Perhaps you accidentally released your mic, so you may wish to request the floor again. So, Kenya, please, you have the floor.
With the recommendations on amendment of Rule 7.2A and Rule 25.5 and 25.6. However, we would like to align ourselves with the submission made by Belgium on behalf of EU with regard to the situation where the chair may exceptionally propose a different order of discussion of the proposal. And agree that it is necessary that in using that discretion, then it should be geared towards ensuring effective consideration of all the proposals in discussion. I think we felt it is important that we highlight that because we believe it is important to have all the consideration to facilitate the discussion of all the proposals. If the chair has to use a different order of the proposals discussion. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Kenya. I'm just taking a note of that comment. Thank you. So I see no further requests from the floor. I will open the floor up now to standing committee members, parties, as well as observers present who wish to comment. In the interim, I will briefly address the point raised by India and provide a bit more detail on the intent of the amendment in Rule 25.5. So Rule 25.5 is the rule that addresses when a party proposes an amendment to a proposal that is that has been submitted for consideration by the Conference of the Parties. The amendment to this rule is intended to have the Conference of the Parties make a decision about whether or not to accept or reject that amendment prior to making a decision about the whole of the proposal. So it is providing a bit more clarity on a more stepwise process in addressing amendments, and is very similar to the approach taken in Committee 2 on the resolution documents. Reducing the scope in the rules of procedure is interpreted in the context of the proposal that is submitted. So if a proposal is submitted that is proposing more restrictions on particular species or taxon, then reducing the scope would be amendments that propose less restrictions, and so it bringing you closer to whatever the status quo. However, if a proposal introduced to the Conference of the Parties is doing the reverse, whereby it is proposing less restrictions, such as a transfer from Appendix 1 to Appendix 2, no, I mixed that up. But the point, what I'm trying to say is that reducing the scope of a proposal is the difference between the status quo for the taxon and the proposal. And so whether or not a reduction of scope implies more or less restrictions is related to the original listing status of the taxon and the proposal in hand. And so in that sense, India, Rule 25.5 does not favor one or the other, but rather it is relevant only in the context of the original proposal, and it is meant only really as a process for agreeing or not any amendments to a proposal prior to then agreeing a proposal. So I apologize, my example got a bit confused there, but but I hope that helped. And of course, I understand there's a desire, I heard from New Zealand in particular, about having some real world examples before agreeing to changes in the dealing of proposals. So I'll take that into consideration when I come to my conclusion. But before I do, I will check again for requests from the floor for all participants. And I see a request from Namibia. So Namibia, please, you have the floor.
For its work. With now the specifics on the proposed changes, we fully support changes proposed to Rule 7.2a, as well as proposed changes to 25.5, that's Rule 25.5. We are, however, not in support of proposed changes to 25.6, as we feel that that rule, as it currently stands, it's working perfectly, and we therefore do not think that it should be changed. And we then in agreement with the earlier intervention made by Indonesia on 25.6. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Namibia. I see a request from IWMC. So IWMC, please, you have the floor.
Allô? Vous m'entendez? Oui, merci beaucoup. Excusez.
Thank you, Madam. I do apologize for taking the floor, but I think that it would be difficult to wind up our discussions on 25.6. We have had proposals put to us, some comments have been made, and there have been some reactions, and we seem to get the impression that the working group really does need to pursue its work on 25.6. We would certainly agree with the proposed changes to 7.2 and 25.5, but on 25.6 there is still some uncertainty. There's one matter that is not clear to us, and that is the whole question of when the same taxon is addressed in different proposals. There are different ways of interpreting that notion, and I do think that it would be useful for the working group to continue its consideration of this matter. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, IWMC. I see a request from China, and then perhaps at that point I will be able to conclude. So China, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I will be very brief. China supports the idea to continue the deliberation of the working group. I want to raise two other points that are not mentioned by the discussion before. One is that the Rule 24.2, that's the amendment by proponent of the proposal, and it's unconditional. While Rule 25.5, it's amendment made by non-proponent, and it's conditional. So there is a good chance that a competing situation will occur between Rule 24.2 and 25.5. And the other issue I want to raise is that there's also a good chance that two amendments will come from Rule 25.5. That's a situation that the existing version of the working group cannot solve very well. And also, I want to raise the situation that given the amendments during the debate, for non-native speakers of English, Spanish, and French, it's very difficult for every participant to follow immediately. So we should have some solution. Maybe it could not be put in rules of procedure, but in some other way it should be solved. So China suggests we should form a closed loop for all kinds of possibilities that could occur during the debate of proposal, and to give a very clear guidance to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, China. And indeed, I see that we are trending to accept the conclusions of the working group on in paragraph 17 on Rule 7.2a and 25.5, but to continue deliberations on 25.6. And I hear some other matters as well that have been raised for consideration. So this is what I'm starting to sense, but I will continue to see if there's any last requests for the floors before drawing my conclusion. Okay, so I don't see any further requests on the floor. So my conclusion at this time is that the Standing Committee agrees with the amendments found in Rule 7.2a as found in paragraph 8 of the document, and agrees with the amendments to Rule 25.5 and the slight tweak to 25.6 found in paragraph 9. So that's the rule that deals with managing amendments provided on the floor. However, the Standing Committee feels that more consideration is needed of Rule 25.6, and in particular, how to manage proposals. What I hear from Indonesia and Namibia is that changes to Rule 25.6 are not necessary. I hear some desire for some more concrete illustrations of how the amendment proposals in 25.6 might function in order to better understand them. I hear from Belgium and Kenya to underline the proposed amendment to allow the chair to exceptionally propose a different order, be underscored that it be exceptional and require justification. I hear from Canada some language amendments to the final element on managing taxon. There's some questions about how that's interpreted. I hear from China a new issue regarding 25.5 in terms of dealing with competing amendments. And then a separate, perhaps separate issue is about making sure that the parties present at the Conference of the Parties are able to follow the discussion, particularly when amendments are proposed to proposals. So I conclude, therefore, that the Standing Committee would like the working group to continue its deliberations. I note the comments from some parties who are not members of the working group, and should you wish to join the working group, I think of our colleagues from Indonesia, Peru, Kenya, please do let me, as the chair of the Intersessional Working Group, know, so we can ensure we fully take on your concerns. And those are the conclusions that I have drawn from our discussion. So I will allow the Standing Committee to consider those conclusions and let me know please request the floor if you have concerns. And while I do that, I see a request from the floor from Nicaragua. So I will take the request from Nicaragua. You have the floor, Nicaragua. we appear to have lost our colleague from Nicaragua. I see no requests from members of the Standing Committee or other parties, so I am coming to the conclusion that you are agreeable to my proposed path forward. Okay, so therefore the Standing Committee agrees with the recommendations in paragraph 17 of the document, and also agrees to, that the Intersessional Working Group on Rules of Procedure should continue its deliberations on Rule 25.6, taking into account the comments and points raised here at the meeting. With that, I will conclude this agenda item, and I will turn to agenda item 10 on conduct of the committees. Oh, just momentarily. Okay, so I have, before I conclude with the agenda item 9, I do have a request from, I believe it's Sudan. It's unclear, but I am told that Sudan is requesting the floor under the name Taba. So if that is the case, on agenda item 9, I will turn the floor to Sudan.
And we are absolutely supporting the Standing Committee for this opportunity. And we are also accepted the Arabic language and Chinese and Russian as the official language. And we are in Sudan, we need to update our information because we the pandemic of COVID-19 is affected our activities and affected a lot of things there in our country. So we need the fixed budget to continue our reserve and protection of wildlife especially. And thank you.
Thank you, Sudan. I take your point of supporting the approach proposed by the Standing Committee for this item 9, and for your comments regarding the impact of the COVID-19 situation. And I'm looking forward to the discussions of the committee on this this latter matter further on Friday. So I am again concluding agenda item 9 on the rules of procedure. I see a request from Gabon. Gabon, would you like to speak to agenda item 9?
Thank you. I wanted to know if it's possible for Gabon to take part in the working group that will be established on the rules of procedure of the Conference of the Parties.
Thank you, Gabon. Yeah. Thank you, Gabon. So this rules of procedure working group was established previously. However, I note that indeed a number of parties have indicated an interest. And so perhaps as part of the conclusions, I would invite those who are not part of the working group, but who have an interest in participating, if they could indicate that interest through the Secretariat, who will then forward it to myself as chair. I will certainly welcome more participation from parties to make sure we have a robust understanding and conclusions that we can bring to the Standing Committee. So I would ask after the conclusion of the meeting if those interested in participating in the working group, if they could just, and Secretariat, I appreciate your patience in this, identify that interest to the Secretariat perhaps by the end of the meeting, so by close of meeting on Friday, so that the Secretariat can provide me, and then I will follow up with those interested parties and others via email in line with the rules of procedure, of course. So again, those interested, and I believe an organization indicated an interest, so you can feel free to indicate your interest to the Secretariat by the close of the meeting in writing, and then I will collect that interest and adapt the working group in accordance with the rules of procedure. Niger, is your question similar to that from Gabon? Niger, you're asking for the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair, says Gabon.
I say that Niger want to be part of this group.
Excellent. Yes. So to save time, I will just ask countries who wish to join the deliberations on the COP rules of procedure to simply indicate so in writing to the Secretariat, perhaps either in the messaging, or you can send them an email. And if you could do so by Friday, I will follow up, as this working group is working electronically anyway, and so I will be following up by email. So thank you all for your participation, and I'm pleased to see interest from parties in the further discussions of 25.6. So I will conclude our discussion on agenda item 9 regarding the rules of procedure. As noted, the Standing Committee accepts the recommendation in paragraph 17 and requests the Intersessional Working Group to continue deliberating on Rule 25.6, taking into account the points raised here at this discussion. And I will now close and turn to agenda item 10 on conduct of committees. And so in the interests of time, I will provide a brief presentation of this document and then open the floor. So this document by the Secretariat prevents some draft guidance to assist chairs of working groups established by the committee. And those guidance is found in the annex to the document. This first draft of this document was distributed through notification number 2020/067, and comments were received. So the Secretariat has outlined in here how it has incorporated those comments. So the Standing Committee is invited to consider and endorse the guidance set out in the annex to the document. And you can find this in paragraph 7 of the document. And then the Standing Committee is invited to request the Secretariat to finalize this guidance, taking account any comments heard here, and make it available to chairs of the committee, working groups, and on the CITES website. So with that brief introduction, I will open the floor first to members of the Standing Committee who wish to comment on document 10 on guidance to chairs. Canada, please. Canada, you have the floor. There appears to be a delay with Canada. Perhaps while that is resolved, and I don't know if permissions or if there's another issue, I would invite you to check in the technical messaging to interface with our Kudo experts. In the interim, I will ask New Zealand, followed by Poland.
Thank you. We thank the Secretariat for this document and support its development for working group chairs. Recently appointed working group chairs in the Oceania region find the guidance very helpful. It's comprehensive and will provide for more transparent processes. We do have 3 comments, however, where we feel advice could be a bit further developed. Firstly, we need to be mindful that it can be very difficult for small parties with less capacity to take on both the role of the chair and contribute to a working group. We might want to encourage small parties to take on active roles, and so it might be advisable to look at strategies for assisting with this situation. We've got a number of small parties in our region, and we're quite keen for them to take on regional roles as they come up. The second point is on the balance of parties and observer organisations in a working group. And we note that while the balance is carefully established at the point a working group is stood up, it can be difficult to maintain this balance throughout the life of the working group and through all the deliberations. So we would welcome further advice or strategies for engagement that would help maintain the balance of parties and observer organisations in a working group throughout its duration. And the third point is about the development of guidance to help sequence advice from different advisory bodies or different convention bodies, which is necessary to achieve working group mandates. So our experience here is that the mandates of different CITES bodies and working groups are often closely interrelated and interdependent. For example, standing committee working groups may rely on the advice of a scientific committee discussion or working group, and it makes the sequencing of work really important to achieve the working group mandates within the time that they're meant to produce their outputs. So guidance to support timely sequencing of work between committees would be a very helpful addition. For example, when a decision setting out a working group mandate or process involves another committee, recommendations that the working group chair reach out to that committee chair to invite their contribution or discuss the process at the outset would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand, for those helpful points. I will see if Canada is now able to take the floor. And in the interim, I think I will turn, I had Poland, and then it will be followed by Peru. So Poland, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me well? Thank you. As it is our first intervention, we'd like to ask you to note that whenever Poland is taking the floor, it speaks on behalf of the EU and its member states. Poland would like to thank the Secretariat for elaboration of this comprehensive document. We welcome the guidance and we support further work on this, as we feel it is crucial for effective conduct of working groups. By providing useful assistance to chairs of committee working groups in session and intersessional. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Poland. I had Peru next. So Peru, please, you have the floor.
En nombre de la región América.
On behalf of the region, South America and the Caribbean, we'd like to congratulate the drawing up of these documents, and with the support of the experiences from the working groups, we'd like to say that it's important to have interpretation at the meetings of the working groups so that we can ensure that there's participation of the parties and we meet our mandates that have been set out. Thank you.
Thank you, Peru. And I will continue to take any interventions while I see if Canada can return. I will also open the floor to parties present who might wish to intervene on document 10. I see a request from Gabon. And Gabon will be followed by Chile. So Gabon, please. Thank you, Gabon. I see a request from Chile. So Chile, please.
Gracias, gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As this is the first time we are speaking, we would like to support the work and your excellent management of the committee, and we'd like to support the recommendations in the document. We think that they are substantive in terms of the contribution that we can make to the work of CITES. So, Madam Chair, I'd like to congratulate you once more and mention the support of the Secretariat and being able to carry out this virtual meeting. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Chile. It's certainly a experience, but I think we are getting well through our agenda, which I appreciate. I will see if there's any further requests from the floor. I am it is unclear to me if our colleague from Canada, if my colleague from Canada is able to take the floor. But overall, I'm hearing lots of support for the document, suggesting to me that the committee is agreeable to endorsing this guidance and requesting the Secretariat to finalize the guidance, noting the points raised by the interveners, including areas that could be elaborated further to provide additional support to working group chairs. So I see our colleague from Canada has returned, so I will pass the floor to Canada, please.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies for the technical difficulties. I was given a message that my CUDA time had expired. I just wanted to speak on behalf of the North American region to welcome this document. It provides clear instruction and explanation of the process by which CITES working groups are expected to function, and the region would like to thank the Secretariat for their excellent work in preparing the document. We support endorsement of the guidance and publication on the website. We truly believe that it is important guidance and is coupled with ongoing strong support of the Secretariat and the relevant committee chairs, and it will be of great help to the parties. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canada. And so I will do one last request from the floor from parties, observers, and standing committee members present. I see a request from Japan. So Japan, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I note that the page 11 of the document talks about voting, saying that voting should not occur in the working group. We fully endorse that, again, support the idea, but we have to take a look at the rule of procedure of the standing committee. In particular, rule 17.7, 17.4 talks about the following: insofar as they are applicable, these rules shall apply mutatis mutandis to the proceeding of working group. That include rule 15. So it talks about voting, possible voting. And since this is guidance seeking for the endorsement, we should avoid the contradiction to the rule of procedure of the subcommittee and working standing committee. So I would suggest that instead of the voting should not occur in the working groups, we should say that the chair should avoid voting in the working group to the extent possible, making it the role of the chair to not to resort to the voting in the subcommittee or the working group, and So, and without contradicting with the rule of procedure of the standing committee and its committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan, and I'm assured that the Secretariat is taking careful note of that comment. Certainly, the intent of working groups is to provide advice and conclusions to assist the committees in making their decisions. So I can certainly understand why voting is not something that would be helpful for the intent of a working group. But I also take your point about the rules of procedure. So I'll ask the Secretariat to take that comment into account along with the other comments heard from the other countries in reviewing the document and finalizing it for publication on the CITES website and for provision to intersessional working group chairs. So I see no further requests for the floor. So I conclude that the Standing Committee is ready to endorse the guidance set out in the annex and to request the Secretariat to finalize this annex, taking into account the comments that they've heard here from New Zealand, Poland, Peru, Chile, Canada, Japan, and make it available to the chairs of the committee working groups and make it available on the CITES website. Thank you. We have 5 minutes left in our schedule for today, so I would like to begin the discussion on agenda item 12, cooperation with other biodiversity-related conventions. And if we are unable to conclude, then we will resume with this item again tomorrow. So I will turn our attention now to agenda item 12, and I will ask the Secretariat to provide a brief introduction.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try to be as brief as possible. This is referring to document SC73 document 12. Of course, you are aware that COP has given a broad mandate to the Standing Committee to address cooperation with other biodiversity-related conventions, but this document draws your attention to just the one matter on post-2020 global biodiversity framework. As many of you know and are involved in, it is being intensely negotiated at this time, and we believe that the voice of the CITES parties should be heard during these negotiations. Our document summarizes the inputs of CITES to the different fora which have been contributing to the drafting of this post-2020 biodiversity framework, and most of the engagement up to this time has been by the Secretariat. However, some representatives of the Standing Committee were involved in 2 consultation meetings, and you were there also, Madam Chair, for related these meetings that were organized for related conventions in June 2019 and January 2021. We are suggesting that the Standing Committee establishes an intersessional working group which, with the support of the Secretariat, could provide inputs to these ongoing negotiations on behalf of the parties. In paragraph 13, we suggest that the aim of the working group inputs should be to 1, strengthen the linkages between CITES and the framework, 2, demonstrate the value of CITES to the development of the framework, and 3, identify a role for the convention in the achievement of its objectives. To be fast, we're suggesting to use the same representatives of the Standing Committee who participated in earlier meetings. We have these in paragraph 7 of the document, if they are willing to serve. Of course, this could be expanded as required as there's other interests. We don't really have a strong recommendation on this point, but at least we could start with those who have already been involved earlier on since 2019. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. So in document 12, notably, the Secretariat is proposing an intersessional working group with it sounds like at minimum, the members identified in paragraph 7 who've participated in other related discussions, and with the mandate they propose in paragraph 13. So I will be interested in views from the Standing Committee on forming such a working group, your comments on the mandate, and any interests in committee members or others who might wish to participate in such a working group. And again, if we are unable to conclude our conversation here, I will certainly pick it up again tomorrow. So I have an intervention from the Bahamas, followed by Israel.
Hi, good day, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. It is very satisfying to see this item being presented on the agenda as priority. Activities are carried out by the CBD that affect CITES flora and fauna in a significant way, and consequently, biodiversity and CITES experts already work together in many projects, and it would be beneficial to have this relationship solidified. So with that being said, the Bahamas is in support of an intersessional working group, which we would like to be a part of and supports the mandate.
Thank you, Bahamas. And given the time, I think I will take a final intervention from Israel, and then I will suspend this item until tomorrow. So Israel, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. As the final speaker today, we appreciate the document that was prepared by the Secretariat to try to involve CITES issues in the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. And as such, many countries, it's the same people who are working on CITES as government officials, who are also a part of the negotiations of the post-2020 GBF. There's no doubt that the post-2020 GBF is very, very important, as Bahamas has just pointed out, and that there is a lot of place where CITES issues can be and should be brought up within the negotiations. Having said that, however, we are aware that the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework negotiations are moving ahead extremely quickly, as was mentioned in the document, and they should be concluded hopefully within the next few months. We personally don't think that there's opportunity at this point to start to convene a new intersessional working group to start discussions on how CITES can be input. We feel that the input that's been going on already by the Secretariat itself as a representative in these negotiations and by the actual party representatives is sufficient to be able to make sure that CITES issues are brought up in the negotiations. If in fact we think that perhaps one improvement may be, instead of just having one member of the Secretariat who is involved directly with CBD, to take the chairs of the two scientific working groups and maybe to work together with the Secretariat and make a small committee of 3, that's the 2 chairs of the Scientific Animals and Plants Committee, together with the Secretariat, to be able to work with the CBD Secretariat to be representative at the meetings and to try and to be sure that CITES input is issues are on the agenda and are taken care of as has been done until now. So we are not in favor of starting to establish this new intersessional working group, but we are certainly in favor of the concept of having CITES issues to continue, and we trust the Secretariat to continue the work. David Morgan has been doing an excellent job in this respect, and we look forward to his continuing to lead that. Thank you.
Thank you, Israel. So your point is taken, again, to not establish the working group, but rather rely on the Secretariat's good work and perhaps with support from the chairs of the scientific committees. I am going to suspend our discussion on this for today, given that we have run out of time. I see a request from Indonesia as well as the David Shepherd organization. I imagine there are other parties and members who will wish to speak, and I will certainly be opening the floor again tomorrow for interventions, so you need not worry, you will have your opportunity. But I will close the meeting for today. I will see if the Secretariat has any logistical announcements or conclusions to provide prior to wishing everyone a good day, evening, night. Secretariat?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, just to say that we will do as we mentioned in the logistical notes at the beginning and include in the chat and also on the website what will be discussed tomorrow, so everybody can be aware of how the agenda is going. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. So everyone, this will conclude today's session. I will see you all here virtually tomorrow. I do invite people to try to join in early and take advantage of the half an hour before the meeting to ensure your systems are functioning. And with that, I will see you all tomorrow, where we will continue on with our agenda, starting with this item, agenda item 12. Thank you, everyone.